Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Monday, October the 9th, 2023. So, you know what I'm going to talk about today? I have to talk about Israel and this mass Palestinian attack on Saturday on the country. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, why didn't I predict it? I mean, what is the point in sort of coming in after the event? Well, in my defense, I would say I wasn't looking at Israel. I wasn't looking at Israel's chart. I wasn't looking at the chart of Palestine. I wasn't looking at the chart of Benjamin Netanyahu. Israel wasn't really my focus. That's my defense. I was looking at Biden's chart and Ukraine's chart and America's chart, keeping an eye on Trump's chart, of course, as always. But no, I wasn't really focusing on Israel. But now this attack has happened, I'm starting to look at Israel's horoscope. And this is not a horoscope that I've really looked at much at all, perhaps, in the past. Now I'm looking at it. So I suppose when looking at Israel's chart and looking at other relevant charts, I suppose the question one would have to ask is, if one were to have been looking at Israel's chart on a daily basis and really focusing on everything going on, you know, would one have been able to predict this attack? I think one might have got a hint. Would one have been able to got it? You know, get the day, get the weekend. I'm not sure, but I think one would have kind of got a hint that something was going on. But you know, that's what I'll be looking at later. But to begin with, I want to look at the astrology for today, which is Monday, October the 9th, 2023. So let's look at the chart. Israel's flag, top right, just to show you that Israel is the subject I'm going to be talking about today, so it seems appropriate to put up its flag. So what's happening today? The moon remains in Leo. It's quite well placed in Leo in the sense that it's making a sextile aspect to the sun. You know, it's always nice when the moon and when the sun and the moon are in sextile. The sun and moon, most important bodies in the sky. Sextile aspect is useful. Sun, moon are in harmony with each other, so that's good. That might suggest that it's going to be a good day. But there are other things going on which do need to be considered. So look at Venus. Venus is at 0 degrees. Venus is at 0 degrees Virgo. It's conjunct Regulus, the royal star. So Venus conjunct Regulus, the royal star, means that some of us might have the opportunity to meet important people. What does important mean? Well, I suppose it's relative. Because as Regulus is a royal star, that would literally refer to royalty. But is that realistic? Are you going to be able to meet King Charles III today? Probably not. On the other hand, are you going to be able to have a meeting with your boss today? Maybe. It's possible. So depends what your opportunities are, but there is a chance to meet with important people and to benefit from them. So a good day for networking. But Venus moving from Leo to Virgo is problematic in the sense that Venus doesn't really like being in Virgo. I mean, Venus is a sort of sensitive planet. It's all about relating. Virgo is all about details. So Venus in Virgo can find it difficult to just relate. I suppose, in terms of relationships, romance, at some sort of magical moment, Venus in Virgo can notice something, a speck of dust, something out of place, suddenly focusing on how someone is dressed, or perhaps focusing on how much money someone has got. Remembering that in certain cases, Venus in Virgo can be associated with prostitution, relating for money, where that's what it's about. You've got to think about the material details. Everything has a price, so that can be a problem with Venus in Virgo. So today, if you're relating with other people, if you're at whatever level, try not to focus too much on details. Try to see the broad picture, because there is a temptation there to let little details spoil the magic. And by the same token, don't be surprised if certain people are a bit picky. They notice things that they make some observation about your physical appearance. Plenty of observations to make about my physical appearance. I need my hair cut. I need to shave properly. This shirt is falling to pieces. Venus in Virgo notices these kinds of things. So that's Venus in Virgo. But there's a further problem with Venus in Virgo. And that is that Venus in Virgo is moving towards an opposition with Saturn. Now, this opposition with Saturn does make relationships difficult. Venus and Saturn. In fact, Venus-Saturn aspects are also associated with prostitution. This is a very prostitution-connected thing, Venus in Virgo, opposition Saturn in Pisces. Saturn is just looking at the details, the money and whatever. But prostitution aside, relationships could be difficult because there's just too much focus on material details. As I said, how much money someone's got, what people look like, what's in it for me, that kind of thing. And I will be talking about Venus opposition Saturn more tomorrow, and perhaps its impact from a sort of a global perspective, because I think that Venus opposition Saturn really is quite important. In fact, okay, I should probably talk about it today. I mean, I'm kind of the point I wanted to make about that Venus-Saturn opposition is that Ukraine, born on August the 24th, 1991, has its sun at 0 Virgo. So Saturn is moving to the opposition of Ukraine's sun at a time when Venus is conjunct Ukraine's sun. Now you might say, Venus conjunct sun is nice, but Venus is just being a trigger. Venus opposition Saturn conjunct Ukraine's sun is not good. I think there are going to be problems. We might not see these problems, but who knows what's going on in government circles? Who knows what's going on in the front? So yeah, this is bad news for Ukraine. The Saturn, hitting Ukraine's sun happens a bit later, but again, this Venus is a trigger, and we shouldn't forget that NATO was ratified also on October the 24th, but that was in 1949. Venus opposition Saturn, not good for Ukraine, not good for NATO. So that's something to consider. That aside, there's a bit of a diversion. I didn't really want to talk about politics in this part of the video. Mercury is sesquiquadrate Uranus. You see, there's Uranus. Mercury is sort of 8 Libra, so they're 135 degrees apart. So Mercury sesquiquadrate Uranus would be about being a bit hasty in terms of the way we communicate, perhaps saying the wrong thing and getting into trouble, or having sudden realizations which might bother us. Can we really turn our brain off? It can be difficult to turn our brain off, particularly if you've got Mercury sesquiquadrate Uranus, and you've got Mars square Pluto. It's piling up, actually. So Mars is 28 Libra, and it's square Pluto. That is intense. Past struggles, I talked about it a couple of days ago when I was talking about the weekend. It's about overreacting. It's like the immune system is sort of seeing a small threat and just, as I think I used the phrase, using a sledgehammer to crack a peanut. So we're starting to see a picture of actually quite a difficult day. Overall, there's just too much stuff going on, and while this is happening, on the Aries point, we've got the Venus-Mars conjunction. We've got Venus. Aries is on the Venus-Mars midpoint, and it's also on the Mars-Saturn midpoint. So, Aries on the Venus-Mars midpoint. Okay, that it could be about sexuality. It could be about public discussions about sex. That's one way of looking at it. The Aries is the world at large. Aries on the Mars-Saturn midpoint is about sort of death and society and that kind of thing. I was trying to work out how do you put together Venus-Mars and Mars-Saturn, and isn't there that I don't know anything about music, but isn't there that thing? How I don't know, probably haven't pronounced it right. Liebe's Tod, death in love. Isn't that a Wagnerian concept? In that is opera Tristan und Isolde. Isolde mourning the death of Tristan and so forth. So maybe some of us may be mourning the end of a love affair, a realization that it's all hopeless, that a relationship, someone we love, it's okay. Not talking about literal death, I don't think. I hope not. But the death of perhaps of a love relationship, of a realization about the ending of a relationship, but it's really happened. That is a possibility, but probably an extreme possibility. But I was just trying to work out how to put together Aries on the Venus-Mars midpoint and Aries on the Mars-Saturn midpoint. So that is something to consider. So that's all I want to say about the positions of the planets today. It's not good. I mean, you don't really need to be an astrologer to know that it's not good, because we've just had this stuff going on in Israel, and there's going to be more of this. This is not going to just go away, as I'll be discussing shortly. And I think the planets really do show that Monday is going to be an extremely tense day. In a way, perhaps not so much for ordinary individuals who are not living in a war zone. We'll live our lives, and we'll live our life, and we'll probably be fine. But if we're living in a war zone, and we know that we know Ukraine, Israel, we know if you're in that kind of situation, it's going to be pretty awful, I would have said. But that's stating the obvious, I suppose, and you didn't need to be an astrologer to say that. So as far as the 12 signs are concerned, I got my forecast here for the 12 signs. So these are my forecasts for the 12 signs for Monday, October the 9th, 2023. Aries. Mars, your ruler, is exactly square Pluto. Part of you wants to enjoy yourself, particularly if you're in Canada, enjoying Thanksgiving. But there's something bothering you, and you may feel that you need to apply massive power to get your way, or even just to hold your own. But an overreaction on your part could be your undoing. Put another way, chill out. Taurus. Venus, your ruler, is moving into Virgo. This is something of a mixed blessing. On one hand, you'll feel in your element and you'll have a good relationship with the material world. On the other hand, you'll very quickly be starting to run into resistance, and it's therefore important that you're fully prepared for the challenges coming up over the next day or two. Gemini. Your job is to create harmony. It might be difficult, not least because some Geminis enjoy a good argument, but today you have to be the adult in the room. Smooth communication and trying to reach out to all sides of an argument. Other people might be uncompromising, but you have the flexibility to break the deadlock. Cancer. It's a difficult environment, but probably not for you personally. With the moon making a fortunate sextile to the sun, you're feeling centered, and you can also get a good perspective on money and finance. And if partners are worried about something, or even mad about something, you can bring them down to earth. Leo. You do feel comfortable, but perhaps too comfortable. The moon, while moving through your star sign, aspects Uranus. This represents a disruptive force which could upset your equilibrium. The problem might be that you're too set in your ways and that you haven't given yourself enough wriggle room. A small retreat might work in your favour. Virgo. The planet Venus moves into your star sign. As a result, you're charismatic and you can gain new friends and allies. But when interacting with other people, don't get fixated on irrelevant details. For example, how they're dressed, or on small mistakes they might make. It's the whole person that matters, as you should know by now. Libra. It's not a time when you can lose concentration. There are important things going on around you which could so easily knock you off your stride, and certain issues are too serious to gloss over. But if you understand your place in the wider scheme of things and you're ready to get help where necessary, things should work out just fine. Scorpio. Mars, your ruler, continues to make a square aspect to Pluto. Few things are easy and pretty much everything has to be fought for. But at the same time, you don't want to overdo it. Yet, if you can get the balance right, there's no reason why it can't be a good day. You know what you want, and you know how to ask for it. Sagittarius. It's probably best to look up rather than to look down. Look down and things might look rather difficult. The mess of human existence, exacerbated by stupidity and conflict. Look up and you can see a better future, helped by a helpful aspect between the moon in Leo and the sun in Libra. The future will arrive, and the unpleasantness of a present will then just be seen as a temporary phase. Capricorn. There are few things that you miss. It's not just the minutiae of your material environment that you notice, but also the emotional atmosphere. Other people's feelings are transparent, at least from a Capricorn's perspective, and you have a pretty good idea what they're going to do next. Aquarius. Watch how other people deal with things. They'll probably be successful, which means you don't have to intervene. Indeed, you're not the only person who has the requisite talents and skills, and that should be a relief. Elsewhere, if you disagree with someone, don't make a fuss unless it's a matter of immediate importance. Pisces. A good day for organisation. You can clear away the junk and institute new regimes for keeping things in order. Also, you'll have a good idea about what's going on at a financial level. But with Venus moving into Virgo, your opposite sign, there's one particular person who you have to make a special effort to be nice to. I'm now going to, as usual, move to the I Ching. So, I threw the 3 coins in the air and I asked the question, what is Monday going to be like for people watching this video? And the first hexagram I got was hexagram 55, abundance. This hexagram, by and large, is pretty fortunate. It's about being able to get the recognition we deserve. It's a time of cultural flowering. Overall, people are ready to notice us, and I think we can, feel very satisfied with the way things are, at least to begin with. But when you're dealing with abundance, you just always have to recognize that things perhaps aren't going to get any better. It's the Wilhelm translation of the I Ching talks about the sun at noon. The sun at noon, that's it. It doesn't get any higher than it is at noon. Then it starts to just go down towards the western horizon. And there are a lot of moving lines in this hexagram. In fact, there are four moving lines. The second line moves. The second line shows that, to begin with, it actually may be quite difficult to get the recognition we deserve. But, there are things we can do, talents we have. We've got our particular attitude and personality, and in the end, if we stick at it, we will get some recognition. But the question is, how far will that recognition go? We are in a cluttered environment. So if you're looking to attract someone's attention, remember, I was saying that Venus is conjunct Regulus. So some of us might think, well, this is a time to meet up with someone who is important, who can help us. And yes, we can be successful up to a point, but there are a lot of other people also, shouting for attention. People who probably are less qualified, less skilled than we are. They're not as nice people. Of course, we're wonderful people, aren't we? But these people perhaps aren't worthy of this attention, but they might nonetheless get it. This is a problem, and as we move through the day, we might sort of reach a stage where we get quite frustrated. We're really close to making the connections we need to make, but we don't quite get there, and we might in the end find that the people we're trying to meet, the people we're trying to talk to, have decided not to make themselves available. Whatever, they're not answering the phone, not answering emails, text messages, whatever. So that might be the situation at some stage. But this hexagram, abundance, it does move. And it moves to this hexagram, which we've had quite recently, hexagram number 10, treading. That means treading on the tiger's tail. So the tiger represents, a major force, something quite big and scary, and we are walking around this thing. I mean, it probably connected with the sort of people we're trying to get in touch with, people we're trying to connect with, but it's a bit overwhelming. And so what happens if we actually tread on the tiger's tail? Well, the I Ching actually says that treading on a tiger's tail is not necessarily the end of the world. The tiger certainly wakes up, but actually it doesn't bite us. We're okay. Maybe because we're too small to be bothered, to bother it. This is a big animal. Who are we? So I mean, so I suppose it's saying that if we're trying to advance, particularly at a career level, or in terms of contacts on a social level with treading, we shouldn't be afraid. What's the worst that can happen? Not much. We can tread on the tiger's tail. The tiger is not going to kill us. So we'll be okay. Sure, we've got to be careful. We've got to be respectful. But it's okay. It's okay to take a bit of a risk here, at least on a social level. And I think we can do that if we behave properly. The end result today could be very much to our liking. So that's the I Ching, and I now want to go back to the astrology and talk about what's going on in Israel. I suppose I haven't really done as much preparation as I should have done. I suppose that's the problem of doing a video pretty much every day. But I want to start. Okay, so what I want to start with is the chart of the attack. I looked around for when this attack happened. So what happened, if you haven't been following the news, is that Gaza, which the state of Gaza, major issues between Israel and Gaza. There was a massive attack on Israel from Gaza. That meant rockets. It meant people attacking from the sea, from land, bulldozers because on across checkpoints. It was a holiday in Israel. It looks as if the border posts were not on full alert. The country just had its guard down, and I think something like 250 Israelis were killed. They were, I don't know how you describe it. I suppose kidnappings. Israeli citizens were sort of captured, kidnapped, however you want to describe it, taken back into Gaza. And of course, Israel has retaliated and is going to retaliate more. I mean, that's obvious. It's been described as Israel's 9/11. So this is a chart for the attack. I don't know. I said it for Gaza. I said it for 6:30 a.m. Maybe it was earlier or later. I mean, I said first I saw 7 o'clock, but it was at 6:30. I don't want to fixate particularly on the exact time. So this is the approximate chart for when the attack happened, and I suppose one question might be I mean, if you're a Palestinian commander, of course you don't consult astrologers. But what if you did? I mean, astrology and Islam are not necessarily incompatible. One of the greatest astrologers, Al-Biruni, I think he hung out in Afghanistan in the, was it 10th, 10th century, 11th century, something like that. He was one of the best, and he was a devout Muslim. He certainly cautioned against people. He told people not to, asking questions about. He was really annoyed about fortune tellers trying to talk about people's previous incarnations, because that was certainly not Islamic, and he took the view that the authorities should, I think, really come down hard on people that do that. But anyway, let's say you were an astrologer to, I don't know, a Hamas commander or whatever. Was this actually a good time to launch this attack? Well, okay, when you're doing timing, you really need to look at the moon. That's the first thing you do. So you've got moon in Cancer. Yes, moon is in a very good position here. In the sense that it's in mutual reception of Jupiter. Moon is in the exaltation of Jupiter. Jupiter is in the exaltation of the moon. So probably launching this attack with a Moon-Jupiter mutual reception probably helped. I suppose Moon-Jupiter, everyone was relaxed and easy, and then you came in, and Moon in Cancer, close to the midheaven, whatever time the attack was. Probably not bad in the short term, but you can see that the moon was applying to a square of Mars. I don't think that's quite so good. Also, Mars, if you're attacking someone, you've got to consider Mars. Mars is conjunct the South Node in Libra. Libra is a sign of Mars's detriment. South Node is it's the line of least resistance. It's what comes easiest. So if you're Hamas, this is what comes easiest. Hamas, by the way, is that the party running or grouping running Gaza? And so it comes easiest. It's what comes easiest. Mars conjunct South Node. But is that the right thing to do? This is past behaviour. This is behaviour you should have grown out of, because you know what's going to happen. It's always the same, isn't it? And so I don't think that bodes very well for the ultimate success of this attack. Still, I think the chart is quite descriptive. The Sun-Mars midpoint. So the Sun is at 13 Libra, Mars at 26 Libra. The Sun-Mars midpoint is at about 20 Libra. So the Moon is exactly square the Sun, this wide Sun-Mars conjunction. You've got Moon squaring the Sun-Mars conjunction, and I think that fits extremely well. Also, hypothetical planet. I kind of feel a bit stupid. Last few weeks I've been forgetting about hypothetical planets. I certainly should have brought this up for in my weekend horoscope, but for my weekend video that I just did. So hypothetical planet, the one that really, in terms of hypothetical planets, let's just quickly show them. Hades, this hypothetical planet representing death, was at 13 degrees 42 minutes Cancer, pretty close to the midheaven, assuming we say that the attack was at 6:30, and Hades is pretty much exactly square the Sun. So Sun exactly square Hades. This is when the attack happened, and it wasn't just a military attack; it was a murderous attack. People were sort of killed in cold blood. People, it was not pleasant. it was a terrorist attack in some respects. It wasn't just a military operation, and so Sun square Hades, that kind of makes sense. Um, so okay, that's the attack. Oh, one other thing about the attack, which should be mentioned, um, relates to the Aries point. The Aries point, is the world at large. It's not about individuals; it's about society, and so forth. So, looking at the Aries point, we see that Aries, the Aries point. If we look at the Aries point, Jupiter is on the Mars-Saturn midpoint, and the Mars-Saturn midpoint is within just over a degree away from the Aries point. But certainly we've got Jupiter exactly on the Mars-Saturn midpoint, and that Jupiter on the Mars-Saturn midpoint is fairly close to the Aries point. Jupiter on the Mars-Saturn midpoint is it's reveling in killing. That's one way of looking at it. One tries to, one expands through killing. Okay, one could also say it's an easy death. I don't think that's appropriate, but Jupiter on the Mars-Saturn midpoint, that's what it's about. Hamas, these people coming in, enjoying killing. I mean, that is a way of seeing it. Not nice. Now, what does this mean for Israel? So Israel's chart. So the general view of Israel's chart, May the 14th, 1948, is when Israel declared its independence at 4 p.m. in Tel Aviv. It is not surprising that Israel has Sun in Taurus. The Sun in Taurus, it's the promised land. That's incredibly Taurean. The whole concept of land, Judaism as a religion being focused on the land, and that land being particularly important. So, and of course at the time, the concept of farming and kibbutzes and all this. So totally Taurus country, and so that's Israel's chart. You can see though that this Sun in Taurus is in the 8th house. I mean that's a bit grim, and is suggestive of the struggles coming in. I think that at the time Israel declared its independence, this was the time when it was being invaded pretty much on all fronts, and so this was Sun in the 8th. It was at the very moment it declared its independence that everyone was trying to destroy it. So that kind of that sort of fits. Now, as far as what was going on, Israel's chart, was anything going on as far as, say, transits? I mean, how did Israel's chart relate to this invasion? So let's just put the two charts side by, one in between the other. So Israel's chart is in the middle, and on the outside is the charts for 6:30 on 6:30 a.m. on Saturday. So the first thing to notice is that Uranus, transiting Uranus is at 22:48. 22:28 Taurus. So this was a time, okay, it was not exactly on Israel's sun, but it was pretty close to Israel's sun. Um, so this was a time of turmoil and instability in Israel. This is, recently in Israel, the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been making himself very unpopular. There have been fears that he's some new dictator. I'm not quite sure on the details, but many Israelis thought he was running a coaching horses through the rule of law in Israel. So there was a lot of instability, and that was in Israel, and that was before the invasion started. Then we have to consider the Mars-Saturn midpoint. So there is Israel's Mars and Saturn. So Israel has got, when it was founded, had a sort of wide Mars-Saturn conjunction. Okay, it's 12 degrees apart. But the actual midpoint of Mars and Saturn is 22 degrees 22 minutes Leo. We can see that Uranus was at 22 degrees 28 Taurus. So Uranus was exactly square Israel's Mars-Saturn midpoint, and I think that and that midpoint in turn was pretty close to the sun was squaring the Mars-Saturn midpoint. So I suppose an astrologer, perhaps an Israeli astrologer who was using midpoints, who was very much focused on that, would possibly have noticed this approximate time and seen, well, actually maybe something was going on. So yes, I think, and Uranus on the Mars-Saturn midpoint, how would you interpret that? Well, sudden death. That is one way of looking at it. Let's see what Reinhold Ebertin would say about Uranus on the Mars-Saturn midpoint. Ebertin says, extraordinary and unusual powers of resistance, the ability to give as well as to take under provocation, the inclination to apply brute force, a test of nervous strength, intervention by higher power or by providence, a sudden illness, a sudden accident, separation, or case of death. Those powers of resistance give as well as take. This is what's going to be happening now. So that Uranus on the Mars-Saturn is not just suddenly this invasion where a lot of Israelis get killed, but it's also giving back. So this is an environment where there's going to be, we know without, we didn't need astrology to tell us this, there's going to be a lot of death. This is the way it's going to be. So I think that's certainly important. But, what is actually really interesting is Venus. Transiting Venus at the time of the invasion was at 28 degrees 24 minutes Leo, and Israel's Mars was at 18 Leo. So what do we make of that? Venus conjunct Israel's Mars leading to an invasion. Does that make sense? On the surface, no. But I think what we have to do is we have to see Venus as being a trigger. So remember, Hades was at 13, Hades was at 1342 Cancer at the time of the invasion. So that Hades was just past the semi-square of Mars, of Israel's Mars. And so Mars is about aggression. Hades, semi-square Mars, you've got the potential for a lot of violence. And then the Sun was, Hades was up, Hades was at, so if you look, Hades was at 13. I'm not going to put all the hypotheticals up, but so if Hades was at was at 13 Cancer up here, making a semi-square to Mars. And then the Sun was at 13 Libra, also making a semi-square to Mars. So this Sun square Hades was actually directly hitting Israel's Mars. And then Venus was coming along and acting as a trigger. So the fact that it's a planet of love doesn't matter. It could have been Mercury, it could have been, might have been the moon, you know, it didn't. So Venus's nature doesn't matter. So I think that is a key point in terms of triggering this. I also want to quickly look at the solar arc directions for Israel. So solar arc directions, remember, you move the planets 1 degree a year. So Israel was born 1948, so Israel's going to be about 75 years old. So you move everything 7 degrees. So so there's Israel's chart, and we will there are the solar arc directions, and so let's see if we can find anything. We notice that solar arc directed Mercury is at 2227 Leo. In other words, solar arc directed Mercury is exactly on Israel's Mars-Saturn midpoint. So that's just another trigger. I mean, if you look at literally Mercury on a Mars-Saturn midpoint, you might say, well, that's about thoughts about death, perhaps, but or depressed thinking. But there was a big pile-up, both by solar arc directions and by transits, you know, on the, well, you had, so transiting Uranus was square the Mars-Saturn midpoint, and Mercury was, by solar arc direction, was on a Mars-Saturn midpoint. And so I think, you know, again, if you were an Israeli astrologer, you would have seen this if you were using midpoints and solar arc directions, and you would have been trying to work out the exact timing. And maybe if you looked at the Mars Venus aspect to Mars, a Hades aspect to the Mars, Sun aspect to Mars, I think he might have got an idea about when this thing was going to be. But of course, I'm looking at it with a point of, you know, from a benefit of 2020 hindsight. Another national chart I want to look at is the chart of Palestine. There are several charts of Palestine. This is the chart. This is the chart for when the Palestinian independence was announced. I think by the PLO, by Yasser Arafat, not in Jerusalem or in Palestine, but actually in Algiers. You know, in a way, you should take the place it's announced, not where it's announced for. You know, it's like, you know, with the United States Declaration of Independence, you always set that chart for Philadelphia. You don't set it for Washington, D.C. or no, you because Philadelphia is where independence was announced, and in the Palestine case, independence was announced in Algiers. There are other charts for Palestine. I'm not sort of going to get into sort of debates about which chart to use. I had a limited amount of time at my disposal to prepare this video, and this was the chart that I found. So what was going on in this chart for Palestine, you know, when this attack happened? I mean, this might be a test to see whether this chart is actually valid. So here's a chart for Palestine in the middle, chart for, and on the outside This declaration, remember, November the 15th, 1988. And I got it as being 12:40 a.m. If I've got that wrong, let me know in the comments. But I found several sources, astrological sources, which suggested that. So at the time of the attack, if we got the timing right for this Declaration of Independence, then we've got 29 Libra on the ascendant. And so Venus was at 28, sorry, not 29 Libra, I mean 29 Leo was on the ascendant. And so Venus was crossing the ascendant. So you can imagine the feelings of sort of happiness and joy. Venus, as you cross the ascendant, this is a wonderful thing, Venus in Leo. But at the same time, you've got Saturn doesn't actually go back into Aquarius, but Saturn is starting to be very closely on the descendant. The descendant, this is Palestine's enemies, in other words, Israel. And Saturn is close to the descendant when this attack happened. And so you're going to get this Venus-Saturn opposition in a couple of days' time, very close to Palestine's ascendant. And that may not be such a good thing. Do you really want to have Venus-Saturn opposition on your ascendant? This is, if you like, Israel's payback at a time when Uranus, for the last, I don't know, few months, Uranus is pretty close to Palestine's midheaven. So I don't think that's great. And so I'm not convinced overall this is going to work well for Hamas and Palestine. Oh, look at Pluto. Pluto is at 2754 Capricorn, going retrograde, but about to turn direct. And Palestine has got their moon at 2820 Capricorn. So Pluto is going to be on Palestine's moon for the next month or two. And so the moon is the people. Pluto, I suppose you could say Pluto is driving people underground. If you're being bombed, you have to go underground. But I don't think this is very fortunate for Palestine. I think the Palestinian people may represent some kind of change, some kind of transformation. I'm not convinced that's going to be particularly good for Hamas. So I don't think overall that these transits to the horoscope of when Palestine was its independence was declared, I don't think they're particularly fortunate. And you can see, okay, Jupiter's transiting Jupiter was opposition Palestine's Mercury pretty exactly. It's about propaganda. It's about trying to get something out into the open. There's Palestine's Mercury Pluto conjunction, desperately trying to bring out the message. Mercury Pluto really trying to ramp up the propaganda. Jupiter's opposition that. So this is what it's all about. It's saying, don't forget us, we're here. And causing a sort of big splash, because I suppose if you're a Palestinian, it's not looking good, because other Arab states like Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Jordan, Gulf states are starting to have more and more connections with Israel. You're starting to have embassies being opened, and sort of, what about poor Palestinians? They're being forgotten, they're being left behind. And this is a country, Mercury conjunct Pluto, which is obsessed about being able to communicate. I mean, I can understand why. But Jupiter, this is their big thing. This is how they're going to do it. But is it going to work? Is it going to be a success? I doubt it very much. Finally, I wanted to look at the horoscope of Benjamin Netanyahu. What does it mean for him? Now, I've got October the 21st, 1949. That was for sure. That was Benjamin Netanyahu's birthday. Um, we don't know precisely when he's born. We know he was born in Tel Aviv, I think, but we don't have an exact time. Pretty much every sort of astrologer quoted in astro.com was saying he was born late morning. Now, I've set his chart for noon. So if he was born late morning, it seems like he probably has Sagittarius rising. But I mean, okay, for noon, his ascendant was 3 degrees Capricorn, but probably he has probably Sagittarius rising. So I just quickly want to see what what's going on for him. He's got a lot of planets in Libra. It's not uncommon to have people, in politics to have their sons in Libra. It's not uncommon for people who have, who set themselves up as strong men, to have sun in Libra. Putin is a Libra. Berlusconi was a Libra. Margaret Thatcher was a Libra. Librans can do very well in politics. So this is his this is his chart. A lot of Libra. We've got wide Mars-Pluto conjunction, Jupiter in Capricorn. Jupiter in Capricorn doesn't really work very well. I mean, I know it's a whole generation, a year of people with Jupiter in Capricorn, but it can be quite mean, Jupiter in Capricorn. It can be quite concerned about money. Jupiter is supposed to be the big idea. And how does it really work in Capricorn? Jupiter can't really function properly in Capricorn. That's why Jupiter is fallen in Capricorn. As far as what was going on to Benjamin Netanyahu when the attack happened, so in the inner wheel, I've got Benjamin Netanyahu's chart. On the outer wheel is the attack. Well, the thing that I noticed was he's got Mars sextile Mars. Mars was in Libra at 2637 Libra when the attack happened. And it was sextile his Mars. So, you almost think that this attack has given him an opportunity. It allows him to be aggressive. It allows him to use his Mars unfettered. And so quite possibly it actually strengthens his own position. I mean, you can see that Netanyahu has got Sun at 2738 Libra. The transiting Mars is starting to move to the conjunction of his Sun. So, he's got a Sun-Mars sextile in his natal chart anyway. And so the Mars is coming along and is triggering this Sun-Mars sextile. And I don't know. I think he could find this whole thing politically very useful. Does that mean that long term it's going to be good for him? I'm not entirely convinced. I think that next year he's got Saturn hitting. He's got a Venus-Saturn square in his chart. Netanyahu has, and so Venus-Saturn square is. I'm not sure how many people actually like him. There's something about him that I don't think particularly pleasant. And Saturn next year, starts to really gather speed in Pisces. So next year he's going to have Saturn opposition opposition Saturn. He's going to have Saturn square his Venus, and that's going to perhaps make it difficult for him. Also, if he's got Sagittarius rising, then and you use profections. You have annual rulers, and you take the ascendant as the first year of your birth. Also, and you have a 12-year cycle. So ascendant is the first year of his birth, but then it's also the 12th year. It becomes when you hit 12, your ascendant, and then your ascendant rules your year, and then you keep going in multiples of 12. So when he was 72 years old, he would be ruled by Jupiter. So he's now going to be 70. He's going to be how old is he? He's going to be 74. So 74, we move that 2 signs on, and so that moves forward to Aquarius, and he's got this Mars in Leo opposition Aquarius. And so, when he hits his birthday, which is, in a couple of weeks' time, suddenly Saturn is going to be his ruler, and because Saturn rules Aquarius, and, Saturn is square his Venus, and he's got Mars opposition, he's got Mars opposition, if Aquarius is his, if that's the perfected sign, then he's going to have Mars opposition at Aquarius. So that could be problematic for him. I mean, yes, he might do well in his wars, but what happens next year? So I'm thinking short. Again, one doesn't really need astrology to tell this, but short term, it might work for him. But I think by next year, when Saturn starts transiting and Saturn starts hitting his Venus-Saturn square, then whatever problems he might feel he's escaped from might return. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say about the subject of Israel and Palestine and Benjamin Netanyahu. I'm sorry this is all happening, and I'm sure I'll be talking more about it very soon. Anyway, I will talk to you again tomorrow.